Poor girl trembles in fear on the school stage and asks a young billionaire to pretend to be her dad in the audience. What happens next is unbelievable. The October sky was overcast as Beckham Hayes parked his Mercedes at the entrance of Westwood Elementary School. It wasn't where he normally spent his Thursday mornings. The small and red brick school, with its rusted swing sets and simple glass windows, felt a world away from the skyscrapers where he usually closed deals. Beckham adjusted his navy blue tie and took a deep breath. At 32, he had built a tech empire that placed him among the country's wealthiest men. But unlike other billionaires who graced magazine covers, Beckham preferred anonymity. His clothes were expensive but understated. His face, though handsome, rarely smiled in public. The heels of his Italian shoes echoed across the rain-slicked parking lot. A security guard opened the school door with a respectful nod. Beckham hadn't brought any assistants or public relations staff. He preferred to handle the philanthropic side of his business personally and discreetly. "Mr. Hayes, what an honor to have you." Principal Andrews was waiting for him at the entrance, her small miser-wrinkled hands gripping his with exaggerated enthusiasm. She was a woman in her 60s, with a strand of faux pearls and a navy blue suit faded from wear. "Your foundation has saved our school. We wouldn't have been able to continue without your help." Beckham just nodded, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "It's just the right thing to do." The principal guided him through hallways decorated with children's drawings and colorful letters. The linoleum floor shone, freshly waxed. Children ran back and forth, some stopping to stare at the tall man in a suit who seemed out of place in this environment. "Yeah, the third-floor classrooms were unusable because of the leaks," the principal explained as they walked. "And our library only had donated books, many of them too old. Your funds are changing these children's lives." Beckham watched the curious faces of the little ones peeking at them from classroom doors. They were children from different backgrounds, but all with the same look of curiosity that only childhood possesses. Something in their gazes bothered him, perhaps because he himself had never had a normal childhood. "Do they know who you are?" he asked as they climbed a narrow staircase. "They know someone is helping the school. But we've kept your name confidential as requested," the principal replied. "Although I believe these children deserve to know who their hero is." "I'm nobody's hero," Beckham answered automatically. "I'm just fulfilling my social responsibility." In the principal's office, Beckham handed over the envelope with the check. He didn't like ceremonies or photos. He just wanted to make the donation and return to his world of glass and steel. $200,000, he said, placing the envelope on the worn wooden desk. "It should cover the roof repairs and the new library." The principal opened the envelope with trembling hands, and her eyes filled with tears. "This is more than we asked for. Much more. The children deserve a safe place to learn," he replied simply. The principal put the check in a drawer and smiled. "A talent show is about to start in the auditorium. Would you like to stay and watch? The children would be honored to have our benefactor present." The question caught him off guard. Beckham almost refused automatically. His schedule rarely had room for events like this, but something in the principal's hopeful gaze made him hesitate. "All right," he conceded, surprising himself. The principal seemed genuinely surprised and happy. "Wonderful. It's an annual tradition. The children have been rehearsing for weeks." She led him down another hallway until they reached a simple auditorium. It was nothing like the opera houses and concert halls Beckham frequented in his rare leisure hours. The stage was small, the curtains were frayed at the edges, and the plastic chairs were the cheapest kind. But there was something about the atmosphere that felt more authentic than any charity gala he had ever attended. The small auditorium was packed with enthusiastic parents, cameras and phones in hand. Mothers made last-minute adjustments to bows. Fathers tested their video settings. The air was thick with anticipation and pride. Beckham found an empty seat in the last row, where he hoped to go unnoticed. The noise of conversations and laughter was different from the respectful silence of the boardrooms he was used to. "The second graders will open with a song," the principal explained, sitting beside him for a moment. "Then we'll have individual performances, music, poetry, even a little magic act." Beckham nodded politely, trying to ignore the feeling of unease. He was rarely in such informal settings, full of emotion and controlled chaos. In his world, everything was calculated, measured, predicted. The principal was called away to handle an issue backstage, leaving him alone. As she took the stage to give a welcome speech, Beckham felt a tug on his suit jacket sleeve. Looking down, he saw a little blonde girl, no more than 5 years old, with large, teary blue eyes. There was something in that look that made him forget everything else. He crouched down to her level. "Are you okay?" he asked with a gentleness he didn't know he possessed. The girl clutched a small worn-out teddy bear to her chest. Her light blue dress had bows on the sleeves and a small juice stain on the hem. Her blonde hair was in a messy braid, with loose strands framing her face. "I'm scared," she whispered, her lips trembling. "My mommy isn't here yet." Beckham looked around. The auditorium was full of families, all focused on their own children. This little one seemed to be the only one alone. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ellie," the girl replied, rubbing an eye with her free hand. "Ellie Morris." "I'm sure your mum will be here soon, Ellie," Beckham said, trying to sound reassuring. Little Ellie shook her head. "She works far away. Sometimes she gets stuck at work." Her blue eyes fixed on his. "I have to dance soon. I don't want to go on alone." Beckham felt a pang in his chest seeing the fear in the girl's eyes. All the other children had someone cheering for them. This little one was completely alone. A teacher with graying hair passed by, noticed Ellie, and approached with a concerned expression. "Ellie, dear, has your mother not arrived yet?" "She called and said she was on her way." "No," the girl mumbled, hugging her teddy bear tighter. The teacher looked at Beckham with curiosity. "Sir, are you related to Ellie?" Before he could answer, Ellie spoke in a small but determined voice. "He's my new friend." The teacher smiled, but she still looked worried. "Well, we need to get ready." "You're the 5th performance, Ellie. Shall we go backstage?" The little blonde girl looked at Beckham with growing desperation. Her blue eyes pleaded for something he didn't fully understand. After a pause that seemed to last an eternity, Ellie asked the question that would change everything. "Can you pretend to be my daddy?" Something strange happened in Beckham's chest. A warm, unfamiliar sensation spread through him, as if a long-shut compartment had been opened. For a moment, he forgot who he was. The ruthless CEO, the cold strategist, the lonely billionaire. He looked directly into Ellie's sincere blue eyes. In them there was no judgment or expectation, only pure hope. "Of course," he replied, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. "I'm here." The smile that lit up the girl's face was like a sunbeam breaking through dark clouds. She took his hand without hesitation. "Come on, I have to get in line behind the stage," she exclaimed, pulling him with a surprising strength for someone so small. The teacher looked confused, but didn't question it as Beckham stood up and allowed the girl to lead him. "You are?" "A friend of the family," he replied, without elaborating. "I'm here to support Ellie until her mother arrives." The teacher nodded, relieved not to have to deal with a panicked child. "This way, then. Parents can stay backstage until the performance begins." Beckham found himself being pulled through the side corridors of the auditorium to the makeshift backstage area, where other children waited nervously, adjusting costumes and rehearsing steps. Proud parents took pictures, fixed unruly hair, and offered words of encouragement. "Daddy," Ellie called, the words sounding strange and yet right. "You're going to watch me dance, right?" "I'll be in the front row," he promised. Ellie smiled again and ran to join the other girls wearing similar tiaras. Beckham stood still, watching her interact with her friends, her fear seemingly forgotten now that she had someone in the audience. Another teacher approached him with a friendly smile. "Her first performance?" "Yes," Beckham replied without elaborating. "She's very talented. She's been practicing a lot. You must be so proud." Beckham just nodded, feeling strangely protective. The lie was growing, but somehow it didn't feel wrong. "When it's her turn, I can stay with her here so you can go back to the audience," the teacher offered. "Thank you," he replied, and after a final wave to Ellie, who was now practicing her steps with a friend, he returned to the auditorium. The lights had already dimmed. Beckham found a seat in the front row where Ellie could see him easily. He sat next to a family, a father, a mother, and two small children eagerly waiting for their older brother to perform. Beckham felt strangely out of place among them, but also strangely part of something bigger. For the first time in years, he felt involved in something that had nothing to do with business or profits. As the performances began, Beckham found himself genuinely interested. A boy played the violin, twins juggled, a girl recited a poem about trees. He applauded for each one, not out of obligation, but because these children were giving their all, without cynicism or strategy, just pure art. When Ellie's name was announced, he sat up straighter in his chair. The girl walked shyly onto the stage, wearing a small tiara on her blonde hair. The music began, a children's melody about stars and dreams, and Ellie started to dance. It wasn't a technically perfect dance. She missed a few steps and almost stumbled once. But there was a genuine joy in her movements, a purity that Beckham hadn't seen in a long time in his world of calculating adults. In the middle of her performance, Ellie looked directly at him and smiled, and in that moment, Beckham Hayes, the man who had built an empire with cold logic and iron discipline, felt something break inside him. It wasn't pain, but an opening, as if an invisible wall had crumbled. He smiled back, a real smile, not the polite one he offered in business meetings. He felt a lump in his throat and an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. It was a raw, genuine emotion, something he hadn't experienced in years. When the music ended, Ellie gave a clumsy curtsy. The audience applauded with enthusiasm, but to Beckham, it was as if only he and the girl existed in that space. He gave her a standing ovation, not caring about the curious glances. After the final performance, the children ran to their parents. Ellie came like a flash in his direction and, without warning, threw herself into his arms. Instinctively, he caught her, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. "This was the best day of my life," she declared, her eyes shining with happiness. The words hit Beckham like a punch to the gut. The best day of her life, all because a stranger had pretended to be her dad for a few minutes. What was all his money worth compared to this? "You danced beautifully," he said, gently setting her down. "Mommy taught me at home. We practiced in my room because our living room is too small," Ellie explained, with the brutal honesty only children possess. "I think she would be very proud," Beckham replied. "Ellie!" a female voice called from the other side of the auditorium. A young blonde woman was hurrying toward them, her face flushed from the effort. She wore a uniform from some kind of shop or restaurant, and her hair, the same color as Ellie's, was tied in a simple bun. "Mommy!" Ellie shouted, running to her. The woman hugged her daughter tightly, covering her face with kisses. "I'm so sorry I'm late, my love. The bus broke down on the way and I had to wait for the next one." She looked at the empty stage with sadness. "I missed your dance, didn't I?" "It's okay, Mommy. Daddy saw it." The woman frowned, confused. "Daddy?" Ellie pointed to Beckham, who stood motionless, unsure how to react. "That man over there! He was my daddy today." Ellie's mother looked at Beckham with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. She approached him, holding her daughter's hand. I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice low and embarrassed. "Ellie doesn't have a father and I'm sorry if she bothered you." "She was no bother at all," Beckham replied sincerely. "Your daughter is special." The woman smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "Yes, she is." She extended her hand. "Marissa Morris." "Beckham Hayes," he replied, shaking her hand. It was a calloused hand, the hand of someone who worked hard. Recognition flashed in her eyes when she heard the name. From the donation to the school." He nodded, uncomfortable with the recognition. "We should go," Marissa said after a moment of awkward silence. "I have another shift in an hour. Come on, Ellie." "Bye-bye. Pretend Daddy," Ellie said, waving. "Goodbye, Ellie," he replied, feeling a strange reluctance to see her leave. He stood there, watching mother and daughter walk across the auditorium hand in hand until they disappeared through the door. The place was almost empty now, just staff cleaning up the trash left by the audience. Principal Andrews approached him. "Thank you for staying, Mr. Hayes. It meant a lot to our children. It was different than I expected," he admitted. "Children have that power, don't they? To surprise us," The principal smiled. "I saw you with little Ellie. She's one of our special cases. Single mother, difficult financial situation, but a bright child." Beckham nodded, not knowing what to say. "Well, I won't take up any more of your time," the principal concluded. "I'm sure you have important commitments." "Yes," he replied automatically, although for the first time in a long time, his important commitments seemed empty compared to what he had just experienced. When he finally got back to his car, Beckham sat in the driver's seat and remained still, his hands on the wheel but without starting the engine. The silence that once brought him comfort now felt empty. In his mind, the image of Ellie dancing, smiling at him, calling him Dad, even if it was pretend, replayed over and over. In his chest, that strange feeling persisted. "I've never felt so important to someone," he murmured to the empty car. He started the engine and pulled out of the school's parking lot. But instead of heading to the office as planned, Beckham just drove aimlessly, trying to understand what had changed inside him on that ordinary Thursday morning. For 3 days, Beckham couldn't get Ellie out of his head. Those blue eyes and the pretend daddy echoed in his mind during important meetings, calls with investors, and even during his solitary dinner in his penthouse apartment. The following Thursday, he cancelled 2 meetings, something unheard of in his meticulously planned schedule. His assistant, Caroline, almost dropped her tablet when he announced, "I'll be unavailable this afternoon. Personal matters." Caroline, who had worked with him for 5 years, couldn't hide her surprise. In half a decade, Beckham Hayes had never cancelled a commitment for personal matters. For him, the company was his personal life. "Is everything all right, sir?" she asked, concerned. "Perfectly fine," he replied, already grabbing his jacket. "Just reschedule the appointments." He dressed more casually than usual, dark pants and a blue shirt without a tie. He thought about buying a gift for Ellie, but realized he didn't know what a 5-year-old girl would like. He opted for something more practical. Arriving at Westwood Elementary School, he parked his car and took a deep breath. On the passenger seat was a box of high-quality art supplies, imported colored pencils, markers, special drawing paper, and even a small watercolor kit. If Ellie liked to draw, she would have the best materials. Principal Andrews nearly fell out of her chair when she saw him walk through the front door. "Mr. Hayes, what a wonderful surprise. Did you come to check on the roof repairs?" "They've already started on the east wing and—" "Actually," he interrupted politely, "I came to see if I could volunteer today." The principal blinked several times, as if she needed to process the information. "Volunteer? You mean in the classrooms?" "If possible, yes. Specifically in Ellie Morris's class." A smile of understanding appeared on the principal's face. "Ah, I see. She really made a strong impression on you, didn't she? Ellie has that gift. She's a special child." "I just thought I could be useful," Beckham replied, uncomfortable with the idea of analyzing his own feelings. Of course," the principal nodded. "Ellie's class is with Mrs. Parker, room 104. They're just finishing up art time now." With the box of supplies under his arm, Beckham walked down the hall. Children ran back and forth, some stopping to look at this unknown man who was clearly not a teacher or a parent. He felt like an intruder, but he kept walking. Room 104 had its door open. Inside, about 20 children were sitting at small round tables, drawing and painting with concentration. Mrs. Parker, a middle-aged woman with colorful glasses, moved among the tables, offering praise and suggestions. Beckham stopped at the door, suddenly hesitant. What was he doing here? What madness was this for a billionaire CEO to drop everything to visit a child he barely knew? Before he could reconsider, Ellie looked up from her drawing and saw him. Her face lit up with a smile that made all of Beckham's discomfort vanish instantly. "You came back," she exclaimed, standing up so quickly she nearly knocked over her chair. All the children and the teacher looked toward the door. Beckham felt exposed, as if on a stage without knowing his lines. But Ellie didn't give him time to feel out of place. She ran to him and, without ceremony, grabbed his free hand. "Mrs. Parker, this is my friend. He was my daddy at the show." The teacher approached with a polite smile but curious eyes. "Welcome to our classroom, Mr. Beckham Hayes," he replied, extending his hand. Principal Andrews allowed me to visit as a volunteer today. Recognition shone in the teacher's eyes. Mr. Hayes from the donation. Of course, you are most welcome. She turned to the class. Children, we have a special visitor today. Mr. Hayes is going to help us with our art activity. Some children waved shyly. Others stared at him with open curiosity. One boy raised his hand and asked bluntly, "Are you rich?" "Timothy," the teacher scolded. "It's all right," Beckham said. He looked at the boy and answered honestly, "I have more money than I need. That's why I'm helping your school." The answer seemed to satisfy the children, who soon returned to their activity, all except Ellie, who still held his hand as if afraid he would disappear. "I brought something for the class," Beckham said, showing the box to the teacher. "Art supplies." Mrs. Parker's eyes widened when she saw the contents of the box. "This is very generous, Mr. Hayes. These are professional materials." "I thought they might be useful," he replied simply. The teacher began distributing some of the new materials among the ecstatic children, while Ellie pulled Beckham to her table. "Come see what I'm drawing," she insisted. He sat in one of the small chairs, feeling huge and awkward among the children's furniture. Ellie's table had several drawings scattered on it, colorful houses, strangely shaped animals, and what looked like a human figure in a suit. "It's you," she explained, pointing to the man in the suit. "I'm drawing the day of the dance." Beckham looked closer. The drawing showed two figures holding hands, a large one in a black suit and a small one in what appeared to be a blue dress. They were on top of a brown rectangle that he assumed was the stage. "This is very good," he praised, genuinely impressed by the level of detail for such a young child. Ellie continued coloring for a few minutes while Beckham watched her in silence. It was strange how comfortable he felt there, after the initial unease. There were no expectations, no tense negotiations, no need to prove his worth, just the present moment. "Did you like performing when you were a kid?" Ellie asked suddenly, without looking up from her drawing. The question caught him off guard. No one had asked him about his childhood in years. Perhaps because everyone assumed a billionaire's life only became interesting once the money came along. "I never liked it," he replied after a pause. "I was always shy. I'd get nervous just thinking about it." Ellie nodded seriously, as if this were very important information. "I get nervous too. My heart goes like this. Thump, 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 thump." She tapped her chest quickly to demonstrate. "Mine too," Beckham confessed with a small smile. "But Mommy says it's normal, that even big people get nervous." "Your mom is right. Do you still get nervous about things?" Ellie asked, now looking directly at him. Beckham thought for a moment. "Yes, but about different things. Important meetings, difficult decisions." "What's a meeting?" she asked, pronouncing it carefully. "It's when adults sit around a big table and talk about work for a very long time," he explained. Ellie made a face. "That sounds boring." "And it usually is," he agreed, surprising himself with his own honesty. Ellie laughed, a clear musical sound that made some children at nearby tables look over. Then, with a determined air, she picked up the drawing she was making, blew on it to dry the ink, and handed it to Beckham. "I made this for you, because now you're my friend." Beckham took the drawing carefully as if it were a valuable document. In a way, it was. No one had given him something so sincere in, well, maybe ever. "Thank you, Ellie. I'll keep it safe." "Promise you won't lose it?" "I promise." Mrs. Parker clapped her hands to get the class's attention. "Time to put away your supplies, children. Let's get ready for recess." A collective excitement rippled through the room as the children packed pencils and papers into their backpacks. Ellie took Beckham's hand again. "Come see my cubby before we go to recess." She led him to the back of the room, where each child had a small personalized space, a combination of a locker and a bulletin board. Ellie's was easy to spot, colorful, full of drawings and small trinkets. "This is my special place at school," she explained with pride. "It's all mine." Beckham observed Ellie's small personal space. There were drawings taped up with slightly yellowed tape. One showed what looked like Ellie and a woman who must be her mother, holding hands in front of a small house. Another showed a brown dog with an impossible smile. There were notebooks decorated with hand-drawn colorful hearts. and small toys made of folded paper, a bird, a flower, something that looked like an airplane. "This is Max," she said, pointing to the dog in the drawing. "He belonged to our neighbor, but she moved. I want a dog, but Mummy says our apartment is too small." In her corner, Ellie had created an entire world. It wasn't a world of astronomical figures, million-dollar contracts, or corporate strategies. It was a world of color, imagination, and hope. A world where dogs smiled and small houses were perfect to live in. "And this is the little boat Mommy taught me to make," Ellie continued, showing him one of the folded paper creations. "She said one day we'll put it in real water at the park lake." Beckham gently touched the small paper boat. It seemed so fragile, yet it held so many dreams. In his business world, everything was durable, permanent, built to impress and intimidate. The Hayes Technologies office occupied 10 floors of a downtown skyscraper with imported furniture, contemporary art on the walls, and panoramic views that cost millions. And there he was, crouching in front of a school locker, enchanted by a paper boat. "Your little corner is very special, Ellie," he said sincerely. "Do you have a little corner too?" she asked, curious. Beckham thought for a moment. He had a 7,000 square foot penthouse apartment, an office larger than many houses, a beach house he rarely visited, but a little corner, a place that was truly his, that reflected his dreams and hopes. "I don't think so," he finally admitted. Ellie seemed genuinely saddened by this information. Everybody needs a little corner. Mrs. Parker called the children to line up for recess. Ellie looked at Beckham with expectation. "Are you staying for recess too?" "I can't today," he replied, surprised by his own disappointment. "I have to get back to work." "Oh." Her disappointment was visible, but quickly replaced by a smile. "But you'll come back another day." The question hung in the air. The logical answer was no. He was Beckham Hayes, CEO of Hayes Technologies, not an elementary school helper. He had a company to run, important meetings, decisions that affected thousands of people. "Yes," he replied, to his own surprise. "I'll be back." Ellie's smile was like a ray of sunshine. "Promise, I promise." She hugged him quickly before running to join the line. Beckham stood still, watching the children leave the room in a disorganized, noisy line. Mrs. Parker approached him. "Thank you for the supplies, Mr. Hayes. They are truly extraordinary." "You're welcome," he replied, still looking at the door where Ellie had exited. "Ellie is a very special child," the teacher commented, following his gaze. "Despite all the hardships, she maintains a contagious joy." "Hardships?" Beckham asked, turning his attention to the teacher. "Well, her mother's financial situation isn't the best. Marissa works 2 jobs to make ends meet, but she never lets it affect Ellie. She's an exemplary mother." Beckham nodded, thoughtful. "May I ask him about the father?" The teacher shrugged. "Never been in the picture, as far as I know. Ellie never mentions a father except," she smiled, "except you, apparently." Beckham felt a strange warmth in his chest. "Well, I need to get to the kids," the teacher said. "You're welcome to come back anytime. Having a volunteer like you is an honor for our school." After the teacher left, Beckham was alone in the classroom. He looked again at Ellie's corner, at the colorful drawings and paper dreams. Then he looked at the drawing in his hand, him and Ellie, holding hands on stage. He folded it carefully and placed it in the inner pocket of his jacket, close to his heart. It wouldn't go into a folder or a drawer with contracts and reports. This piece of paper was worth more than all the documents in his office. Leaving the school, Beckham didn't go straight to his car. He walked through the yard and stopped near the playground, where the children played under the watchful eyes of the teachers. He spotted Ellie easily. Her blonde hair bounced as she ran with other girls in a game of tag. For a moment, he allowed himself to just watch. There was a freedom in those children that the adults in his world had lost long ago. They didn't worry about status, armor, power, or money. They just lived in the present moment with full intensity. Ellie saw him and waved excitedly. He waved back, feeling strangely light. As he walked to the car, Beckham touched the pocket where he had stored the drawing. He had important meetings ahead, million-dollar decisions to make, an entire company depending on his leadership. But for the first time in years, All of that seemed a little less important than a drawing made by small hands and treasured like a gem. The school bell rang, signaling the end of classes. Children ran to the gates where parents waited in cars and on foot. Beckham waited, leaning against his black Mercedes, watching the small crowd. His driver had questioned the decision to be dismissed for the afternoon, but Beckham had insisted on driving himself. When Ellie came out, carrying her pink backpack with unicorn stickers, her eyes scanned the yard until they found Beckham. Her face lit up immediately. She ran to him, her blonde hair bouncing in the wind. "You came again," she exclaimed, stopping in front of him with a huge smile. "I promised I would, didn't I?" Beckham replied, a natural smile forming on his face. Marissa appeared right behind her, walking briskly. She wore the same diner uniform as the first time, but she looked even more tired. "Mr. Hayes," she greeted, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you again. Please, call me Beckham." He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I was actually wondering if Ellie would like to get a snack. With your permission, of course." Marissa seemed confused by the request. Her eyes darted between the billionaire and her daughter, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Please, Mommy, can we go?" Ellie pleaded. "Well, Marissa checked her watch. "I have to be at work in an hour." "I can take Ellie and then drop her off at home," Beckham offered. "Or wherever is most convenient for you." Marissa bit her lip, clearly conflicted. "I don't want to be a bother. I'm sure you have more important things to do." "Nothing more important at the moment," he replied sincerely. Something in his voice must have convinced Marissa, because she nodded slowly. "All right, but nothing too far, please. And nothing too expensive." "Mommy," Ellie protested, embarrassed. "It's all right," Beckham assured them. "I know a perfect place nearby." Marissa knelt to Ellie's level. "Behave yourself, you hear, and listen to to Beckham." "I promise." Ellie raised her hand solemnly. Marissa kissed her daughter's forehead and handed the small backpack to Beckham. "My number is on the tag inside the backpack in case you need to call me. I'll take good care of her," Beckham promised. As Marissa walked away to catch the bus, Ellie naturally took Beckham's hand, as if it was something they had always done. "Where are we going?" she asked, excited. Beckham had planned to take her to one of the sophisticated restaurants he frequented with important clients. But looking at this 5-year-old girl, with her messy braids and colorful sneakers, he realized that wasn't the right place. "Do you like French fries?" he asked. Ellie's eyes widened. "They're my favorite." "Then I know exactly where to go." Instead of the Mercedes, Beckham chose to walk. The diner was only 3 blocks from the school, a small family-owned place called Lucy's, with red Formica tables and vinyl booths. It wasn't the kind of place he frequented, but he had noticed the establishment on his visits to the school. When they entered, the aroma of fries and burgers filled the air. A middle-aged waitress with graying hair and a genuine smile greeted them. "Table for 2, she asked, grabbing menus. "Yes, please," Beckham replied. She led them to a booth by the window. Ellie climbed onto the seat, her feet dangling without reaching the floor. Beckham sat across from her, feeling curiously comfortable in the simple setting. "I've never been here before," Ellie commented, looking around with curious eyes. "Me neither," Beckham admitted. In his normal routine, he ate at Michelin-starred restaurants or had his personal chef prepare balanced meals at home. The waitress returned with a notepad. "Type, what can I get for you, dears?" "Can I have a milkshake?" Ellie asked, looking hopefully at Beckham. "Of course," he replied. "You can have whatever you want." Ellie beamed. "I want a strawberry milkshake and French fries, please." "Excellent choice," the waitress approved. "And for Dad?" Beckham felt a strange pang at being called Dad, but he didn't correct the woman. "The same for me, and a hamburger as well." "Coming right up," the waitress said, walking away. Ellie took a crayon from her backpack and started drawing on the paper napkin. Beckham watched her, fascinated by the concentration on her small face as she created shapes on the simple paper. "What are you drawing?" he asked. "Us eating French fries," she replied without looking up. To remember this day. Something warmed Beckham's chest. For him, dinners at expensive restaurants were so common he barely noticed where he was eating. But for Ellie, this simple snack was a special event, worthy of being recorded and remembered. "Do you like dogs?" she asked suddenly. "I do," he replied. "I've never had one, but I've always liked them." "Why have you never had one?" The direct question took him by surprise. "I guess I never had the time to take care of one properly." Ellie nodded, as if that were a perfectly acceptable answer. "I want a golden retriever. They're big and fluffy, and they like hugs." "How do you know so much about them?" "There's a book in the school library." She took a dramatic pause. "I know how to read, you know." "Really?" Beckham was genuinely impressed. "At 5. 5.5, she corrected proudly. The teacher said, "I'm a fast learner." The waitress returned with their orders, milkshakes in tall glasses with colorful straws and baskets of golden, crispy French fries. Ellie's eyes sparkled. "Thank you," she exclaimed to the waitress, who smiled and patted her hair before walking away. Ellie immediately grabbed a fry and took a bite, closing her eyes in exaggerated appreciation. So good." Beckham imitated her, grabbing a fry. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten something so simple with such pleasure. In his business meals, the food was just an accessory to the conversation, rarely noticed or enjoyed. "When I grow up," Ellie announced between sips of her milkshake, "I'm going to have a big house with a yard for my dog to play in." "That's a good plan," Beckham commented. "And I'm going to be a veterinarian or a teacher or an astronaut." She paused. "Shaq or all of them?" Beckham smiled. "I'm sure you can be whatever you want to be." "What did you want to be when you were little?" she asked, curious. The question made him pause for a moment. No one had asked him that in years. His identity as the CEO of Hayes Technologies was so dominant that he sometimes forgot there was a time before it. "I wanted to build things," he finally replied, "to invent things that would help people." "And do you do that now?" "In a way," he said, realizing he wasn't sure of the answer. His company created cutting-edge technology, but how much of it really helped ordinary people like Ellie and her mother? "My mommy works a lot," Ellie said, changing the subject as she dipped another fry in ketchup. "Sometimes she comes home and she's so tired she falls asleep on the couch still in her uniform." Beckham felt a pang in his chest. "That must be hard. She says it's worth it because she can buy things for me, like my colored pencils and my blue dress from the performance." Ellie took a big sip of her milkshake, leaving a pink mustache. "But I'd rather she stayed home more." There was a simple wisdom in those words that struck Beckham deeply. All his money, all his achievements, and yet he had never truly understood the value of time. Not time as a resource to be optimized, but as a gift to be shared. "Did you know the stars we see at night are super old?" Ellie continued, jumping to another topic as only children can. "Like, older than grandmas and grandpas and dinosaurs." "That's true," Beckham agreed. "Their light takes years to reach us." "Does that mean we're looking at the past when we look at the sky?" Ellie's eyes were wide with the idea. "That's exactly right." "Wow." She seemed genuinely impressed with the concept. "You know a lot of things." "Not as much as I think I do," he admitted, surprising himself with his own honesty. They continued eating and talking. Ellie jumped from topic to topic, from stars to her favorite doll, from her teacher to an ant she saw in the park. Beckham listened to it all, answering her questions, laughing at her innocent observations. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, Beckham wasn't thinking about the next appointment, the next goal, the next contract. He wasn't calculating values or planning strategies. There was no hidden agenda, no objective to be achieved. He was simply present, without control, without commercial purpose, just being there. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, creating a golden halo in Ellie's blonde hair, as she excitedly talked about her friend Sophia, who had a shell collection. Beckham watched her, feeling something he couldn't name, a mixture of peace and fulfillment he had never experienced in business dinners or board meetings. "I think we need to go," he said finally, noticing the clock. "Your mom must be waiting." Already, the disappointment was evident in her voice. "We can come back another day," he promised. The smile returned to her face. "Really promise?" "I promise." As he paid the bill, leaving a tip that made the waitress's eyes widen, Beckham realized that in this simple diner, over French fries and a child's conversation, he had experienced one of the most genuine moments of his life. Ellie carefully tucked the napkin with the drawing into her backpack. "Also, I'll always remember," she explained. "I'll remember too," Beckham said. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that it was true. Ellie's small hand gripped Beckham's firmly as they walked through the neighborhood. The houses got smaller and simpler with each block they passed. The contrast with the financial district where his company was headquartered couldn't be starker. "Is this where you live?" Beckham asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "Yep, on the 3rd floor. There's a staircase because the elevator broke a long time ago." Ellie shrugged, as if living without an elevator was perfectly normal. "Sometimes Mommy gets tired of climbing, especially when she brings groceries." Beckham nodded thoughtfully. In his building, if the elevator was out of service for more than an hour, residents would threaten lawsuits. They stopped in front of a 4-story apartment building. The paint was peeling in some spots, and the front garden was more of a neglected flower bed. Still, someone had tried to add some beauty to the place. Pots with colorful flowers decorated the entrance. "Those are Mrs. Rodriguez's flowers," Ellie explained, pointing. "She lives on the 1st floor and takes care of the plants. Sometimes she lets me help her water them." Beckham observed the building, noticing details that would likely escape most people in his social position, the effort to maintain dignity even in modest conditions. The clean curtains in the windows, the organized toys in the small makeshift playground on the side. "Come on," Ellie pulled him by the hand. "I want to show you my other drawings." They climbed 3 flights of stairs, Ellie skipping steps as she chatted about the neighbors. Mr. Kim on the 2nd floor, who had an orange cat. The Garcia family on the 4th floor with twins who went to her school. Little stories of a community united by circumstance. They reached apartment 306. Ellie pulled a key on a string from under her shirt. "Mommy lets me have my own key because sometimes she comes home late," she explained with adult pride. "But I can only use it when she knows I'm coming." The door opened to a small but surprisingly cozy apartment. The living room combined with the kitchen in a single space. The furniture was simple and a bit worn, but impeccably clean. On the walls, instead of expensive art, were Ellie's drawings, carefully framed in cheap frames. "Mommy," Ellie called, dropping her backpack on the couch. "I brought a friend." Marissa appeared from a short hallway, drying her hands on a towel. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, her blonde hair tied in a casual ponytail. Her expression shifted from surprise to embarrassment when she saw Beckham. "Mr. Hayes, I didn't expect. Ellie didn't mention she was bringing you here." "I wanted to show him my drawings, Mommy," Ellie explained, excited. "Can I write?" Marissa glanced around as if suddenly seeing the apartment through a billionaire's eyes. "Of course, sweetie, but Mr. Hayes must be busy and—" "Please, call me Beckham," he interrupted gently. "And I'm not busy. I promised Ellie I would see her drawings." There was a tension in the air. Beckham understood he was entering a world that was not his own. To Marissa, his presence probably represented an intrusion, a reminder of the distance between their realities. "I'll get my special album," Ellie announced, running to her room. They were left alone in the small living room. Marissa seemed uncomfortable but made an effort to be polite. "Can I offer you some coffee? Or water?" "Water would be great, thank you." As she went to the kitchen, Beckham observed the room. There was no luxury, but every inch showed care. The few decorative objects were simple. A plant in a colorful pot, a few photos in picture frames, a lamp with a handcrafted shade. A real home, not a space decorated by professionals. "Ellie told me you helped her at the performance," Marissa commented, returning with a glass of water. "I couldn't be there. Thank you so much." The gratitude in her voice was sincere and, somehow, painful for Beckham. "It was my pleasure," he replied. "Ellie is an incredible girl." Marissa smiled, a tired but proud smile. "Why, she is my world." Before they could continue, Ellie ran back with a large, colorful album. She sat on the couch and patted the space next to her, inviting Beckham to sit down. "These are my special drawings that Mommy keeps," she explained, opening the album. "They're the best ones I've ever made." Beckham sat beside her, genuinely interested. The pages revealed drawings dated and organized chronologically, an artistic evolution from scribbles to more defined shapes, showing Ellie's development. "You're very talented," he commented, turning the pages carefully. "My art teacher said I have a vivid imagination," Ellie replied proudly, stumbling a bit on the big words. Marissa watched the scene from the kitchen, where she was starting to prepare dinner. There was an expression on her face that mixed gratitude and concern, as if she feared this connection between her daughter and the billionaire could bring both joy and pain. "This is the most recent one," Ellie said, pointing to a colorful drawing on the last filled page. "It's the three of us, me, you and Mommy, eating ice cream in the park." Beckham looked at the drawing, 3 figures holding hands in front of what looked like a large tree. His figure was disproportionately tall, wearing something blue that must have been a suit. "But we've never been to the park together," he observed. "Not yet," Ellie corrected with the unshakable logic of children. "But we will one day. I'm drawing the future." Something tightened in Beckham's chest. The simplicity with which Ellie included him in her future plans, the naturalness with which she considered him part of her life. It was both disconcerting and touching. "Ellie, honey," Marissa called softly, "can you go wash your hands for dinner? And then tidy up your toys in your room, please." "But I want to show him more drawings," the girl protested. "You can show him more later. Now, hands and toys, please." With a dramatic sigh that only children can execute, Ellie closed the album and handed it to Beckham. "Take care of it until I get back, okay?" "I promise," he replied seriously. When Ellie left, Marissa approached and sat in the armchair opposite the sofa. Her face showed the fatigue she tried to hide from her daughter. "I need to thank you for everything you've done," she said in a low voice. "Ellie talks about you all the time. The books you donated to the school library, the art supplies. It's made a huge difference." "You don't have to thank me," Beckham replied, feeling strangely uncomfortable with the gratitude. "They are small things. Small for you, maybe." There was a direct honesty in her voice, without resentment, just a statement of fact. "For us, they're big." A silence settled between them. Not exactly awkward, but charged with an awareness of the gulf that separated their worlds. "I got a job at a diner, with strict hours," Marissa continued, as if feeling the need to explain her absence from her daughter's performance. "If I miss a day, they fire me. I work overtime because the pay is low. But it's what I could get." Beckham nodded, not knowing what to say. In his company, he signed multi-million-dollar contracts without blinking, and here was this woman, struggling for a job that barely paid the bills. "I used to work in an office," she continued, looking out the window. "I was an administrative assistant. The pay was better. I had health insurance. But when Ellie got sick last year, a bad case of pneumonia, I had to miss a lot of days. They wouldn't accept it." "I'm sorry," Beckham said, and he truly was. Marissa shrugged, a gesture that tried to downplay the injustice. "It's just the way things are. Now I work at the diner in the morning and clean offices at night. It's not ideal, but we pay the rent." There was a dignity in her explanation that impressed Beckham. No request for help, no self-pity, just the raw reality of someone doing the best they could with what they had. "Ellie is a happy child," Marissa continued with a soft smile. "That's what matters. I try to make sure she has what she needs. Not what she wants. We can't always do that, but what she needs." Beckham looked around again, seeing the apartment with new eyes. The worn couch he was sitting on probably cost less than one of his suits. The refrigerator in the kitchen made a noise that indicated its advanced age. And yet, there was more life and love in that small space than in his 7,000-square-foot penthouse. "You two make a beautiful family," he commented sincerely. Marissa studied him for a moment, as if trying to understand his intentions. "Why are you doing this? Spending time with Ellie, coming here? You must have more important things to do." The question was fair. Beckham thought for a moment before answering. "Because with Ellie, and now with you, I feel real." He was surprised by the honesty of his own answer. "In my world, everything is calculated. Relationships are transactions. No one really cares who you are, only what you can offer." Marissa nodded slowly, as if she understood more than he expected. "Well, we don't have much to offer here besides lukewarm coffee and children's drawings," she said with a slight smile. "It's more than I think I've ever had," he replied. The sound of hurried footsteps announced Ellie's return. "I'm done. Clean hands and toys put away." She looked between the two adults, sensing the atmosphere. "Are you talking about grown-up stuff?" "We were just getting to know each other better," Marissa replied, standing up. "Mr. Beckham, would you like to stay for dinner?" "It's nothing fancy. Just pasta with tomato sauce, but Ellie would be happy." The offer clearly cost Marissa, not for lack of generosity, but from the embarrassment of offering something so simple to someone accustomed to luxury. "I love pasta with tomato sauce," Beckham replied. "It would be my pleasure." The dinner was simple but surprisingly pleasant. Seated at the small kitchen table, Ellie dominated the conversation with stories from school and curious questions. Beckham answered everything with patience, while Marissa watched, gradually relaxing. After Ellie went to bed, insisting that Beckham read her favorite story first, he and Marissa sat in the living room again. "She really likes you," Marissa commented, holding a cup of tea. "I've never seen her get attached to someone so quickly." "Maybe because I didn't try to impress her," Beckham suggested. "Kids are good at spotting fakes." "Yes, they are," Marissa paused. "I should warn her not to get too attached. People like you." Thais eventually move on. Her frankness caught him off guard, but it was fair. How many times had he entered and exited people's lives at his convenience? "I don't plan on disappearing," he replied firmly. "Intentions change," she said simply. "I'm not being ungrateful. What you've done for Ellie, for the school, it's wonderful. I'm just being realistic." Beckham understood her fear. To Marissa, he was a comet passing through their lives, bright, fascinating, but temporary. Someone who would eventually return to his world of privilege, leaving only memories behind. "I understand your concern," he said finally, "but I would like to continue being a part of your lives, if you'll let me." No pressure, no expectations. Marissa studied him for a long time before answering. "We'll see how things develop then." It wasn't an enthusiastic yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a cautious opening, the most a protective mother could offer. In the following weeks, a strange but comfortable routine began to form. Beckham rearranged his schedule to visit Ellie's school at least twice a week. Sometimes he helped with reading in the library. Other times, he participated in art activities. At first, his presence caused a stir. It wasn't every day that a billionaire regularly appeared at a public school, but over time, he became just Ellie's friend, as the children called him. Occasionally, he would take Ellie for a snack after school, always with Marissa's permission. Sometimes, Marissa would join them when her schedule allowed. They were simple moments: ice cream in the park, visits to the local zoo, an afternoon at the movies watching an animated film. Beckham made discreet donations to the school, new books for the library, equipment for the playground, a fund for field trips. He made sure they were anonymous, although everyone knew their origin. For Marissa and Ellie's apartment, his contributions were even more subtle: a special discount on the rent that the landlord inexplicably offered, a scholarship for extracurricular activities that happened to be awarded to Ellie, a new refrigerator that appeared when the old one finally stopped working, supposedly part of a city program. Marissa suspected the origin of these miracles, but Beckham always denied involvement. He didn't want his help to sound like charity or create a greater imbalance between them. As fall turned to winter, the impromptu trio found their rhythm. Ellie flourished with the additional attention. Marissa, initially reserved, began to relax in Beckham's presence, allowing herself occasional moments of vulnerability. And Beckham discovered a version of himself he didn't know, someone capable of laughing without reservation, of marveling at small discoveries, of valuing moments that couldn't be measured in profits or losses. There was no name for what they were building. It wasn't exactly friendship nor family in the traditional sense. It was something new, undefined, woven with threads of circumstance, gratitude, and growing affection. In his penthouse office, Beckham now kept a special drawer. Inside, he carefully stored every drawing Ellie gave him. Sometimes, in the moments between important meetings, he would open the drawer just to look at those colorful pieces of paper. They were reminders of a different reality, one he hadn't known until now, but which somehow seemed more substantial than anything he had built before. Winter arrived with force, bringing longer nights and temperatures that dropped quickly after sunset. The streets were decorated with festive lights that blinked red and green, reflecting in the puddles left by the afternoon rain. Beckham drove carefully, slower than usual. In the back seat, Ellie slept soundly, wrapped in a blanket he always kept in the car for her. The little one had spent the entire day at the school's winter festival, running, playing, and consuming more sugar than Marissa would normally allow, an exception for the special occasion. He glanced in the rearview mirror, observing the girl's serene face. In just a few months, Ellie had become a constant presence in his life. The days he didn't see her felt incomplete somehow, as if an essential color was missing from his palette. Beside him, Marissa looked out the window, lost in thought. She wore simple jeans and a light blue sweater that matched her eyes. The same eyes Ellie had inherited. Her blonde hair was down today, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She seemed more relaxed than Beckham had ever seen her. "She really had fun today," Marissa commented, breaking the silence. "I think the whole school had fun," Beckham replied with a smile. "That face-painting booth was a huge hit. Especially after you volunteered to be painted too," Marissa laughed. "I never thought I'd see Beckham Hayes, the business titan, with a red reindeer nose and green cheeks." Beckham laughed too, remembering the moment. It was worth it just to see her smile. "You're spoiling her, you know. It's my job as—" He paused, unsure which word to use. He wasn't a father, nor an uncle, nor any formal relation. "As a friend," he finally completed. Marissa didn't reply immediately. When she did, her voice was soft. "You've become important to her, Beckham, to both of us." Something warmed his chest. In recent months, he had tried to maintain a certain emotional distance, not because he wanted to, but because he feared complicating their lives. After all, he was Beckham Hayes. His life was public, complicated, full of expectations and obligations. "You're important to me too," he replied simply. They arrived at Marissa's building. The place looked different now, no longer an anonymous building in a modest neighborhood, but a familiar, almost welcoming place. Beckham knew the neighbors by name, knew which stairs creaked, which window needed fixing. "Do you want me to carry her?" he offered, looking at the sleeping Ellie. "Please," Marissa replied. "I don't think she'll wake up even for an earthquake." Carefully, Beckham lifted the girl into his arms. She mumbled something unintelligible and snuggled against his chest without waking. Her weight was light, but somehow significant, an implicit trust that moved him every time he carried her. They climbed the stairs in silence, Marissa in front with the keys, Beckham right behind with Ellie in his arms. The familiarity of the routine was comforting. How many times had they done this in the past few weeks? Ellie asleep after a day of adventures, the three of them returning to the small apartment as if it were the most natural thing in the world. In the apartment, Marissa opened Ellie's bedroom door, and Beckham went in, gently placing her on the bed. Marissa took off her daughter's shoes and covered her, leaving a soft kiss on her forehead. Beckham watched from the doorway, feeling simultaneously part of the scene and an observer. They returned to the living room in silence. Normally, this was when Beckham would say goodbye. But today, something felt different. "Would you like to stay for some tea?" Marissa asked, surprising him. "I know it's late, but it would be nice to talk for a bit." The proposal was simple, but Beckham felt its significance. In the months they had known each other, his moments alone with Marissa had been brief and mostly focused on Ellie. This invitation seemed to mark a shift. "I'd love to," he replied. While Marissa prepared tea in the small kitchen, Beckham looked around the apartment. It seemed cozier now than on his first visit. New decorative touches here and there, a plant on the windowsill, colorful cushions on the sofa, a new rug. Small improvements he didn't mention but noted with satisfaction. His eyes fell on a recent photograph framed on the bookshelf. In it, Ellie was sitting on a park bench with Marissa on one side and him on the other. The three of them were smiling at the camera, their hair messy from the wind, ice creams in hand. It had been a perfect autumn Sunday, weeks ago. Marissa returned with 2 steaming mugs. "I hope you like chamomile." "Thank you," he said, accepting the mug. I can't remember the last time I had tea that wasn't in a meeting. They sat on the sofa, a comfortable space between them. The rain began to fall again outside, tapping gently against the window. "Have you ever wanted something different?" Marissa asked after a moment. "What do you mean?" "Different from the life you have. This whole empire, responsibilities, expectations. Have you ever wanted something simpler?" Beckham reflected on the question, sipping his tea. "I didn't know I wanted it until I met you and Ellie," he answered honestly. "I always thought my path was set from birth. And was it? In a way, my father built the company from the ground up. It was always clear that I should follow in his footsteps, make it bigger, better, more profitable." He paused. "I never really questioned it, until now." Marissa nodded, understanding. Sometimes the paths we don't choose are the ones that teach us the most. They sat in silence for a few minutes, just enjoying the quiet of the moment, the cozy contrast with the world outside. The rain intensified, creating a curtain of sound that seemed to isolate them from the rest of the universe. "Can I ask something personal?" Beckham said finally. "Of course. What about Ellie's father?" The question hung in the air for a moment. Beckham almost regretted asking it, fearing he had crossed some invisible line, but Marissa didn't seem offended. Instead, a small, restrained smile appeared on her lips. "He left before she was born. Said he didn't know how to be a father." The simplicity of the answer contained volumes of unmentioned pain. Beckham pictured a younger Marissa, probably scared, facing pregnancy alone, while the man who should have been by her side simply disappeared. "You were both parents?" he said softly. "And that's huge." Marissa looked at him, surprised by the comment. For an instant, her eyes shone with unshed tears, but she blinked them away quickly. "Thank you for saying that," she replied, her voice a little shaky. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough." "You're doing more than enough. Ellie is proof of that." Marissa smiled, grateful, and took another sip of tea. When she spoke again, her voice had a different tone, as if she had decided to share something she had held back for a long time. "You know, it wasn't always this hard for us," she began. "When I found out I was pregnant, I had a good job. It was nothing extraordinary, but it was stable. I worked in the administrative department of a large company." "Which company?" Beckham asked. Interested. "Hayes Subsidiaries," she replied. "Ironically, a division of your family's company." Beckham felt a jolt of surprise, but let her continue. "The job was good. The pay was fair. I had health insurance, benefits. I managed to save a little during my pregnancy to prepare everything for Ellie's arrival." Marissa glanced at her daughter's closed bedroom door. "The first few years were smooth. My boss was understanding, gave me flexibility when I needed it. But then there was a restructuring, new managers, new policies. Suddenly, missing work became unforgivable, even with a doctor's note. And when Ellie was 4, she got a severe case of pneumonia." "I remember you mentioned that before," Beckham said softly. "It was terrifying," Marissa continued, her eyes now distant, reliving the memory. "She was hospitalized for 5 days. I didn't leave the hospital for a minute. When we finally came home, she still needed constant care." Marissa took a deep breath before continuing. "I called work. I explained the situation. I asked to use my accrued vacation or unpaid leave, anything. But the answer was clear. Either I came back immediately or I was fired." She shook her head, the resentment still visible. "I chose my daughter, of course. What mother wouldn't?" "What happened next?" "I worked for a good company. The pay was fair. But Ellie got sick. I was absent for a few days, and I was fired without even a chance to explain." She shrugged, a gesture that tried to downplay the injustice. "They just let me go. They didn't even let me talk to HR." Beckham felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Tish, when was this exactly?" "About a year ago, last October." Last October, the time of the major restructuring his father had implemented to increase operational efficiency. Beckham remembered the meetings, the charts showing cost reductions, increased productivity. He remembered his father boasting about how the new attendance policies would reduce absenteeism. "That company belongs to my family," he said, his voice almost a whisper. Marissa looked at him, surprised. "I know. I've always known." Why did you never say anything? What was there to say? You weren't involved in the HR decisions of a subsidiary. She sighed. Besides, I didn't want our friendship to be based on guilt or obligation. Beckham felt the weight of that revelation. How many Marissas had been affected by the cold, calculated policies the company implemented? How many families had suffered so that the numbers in the quarterly reports would look better? My father sees numbers, he said slowly, the understanding crystallizing in his mind. Guy doesn't see people, but I'm different, and it's time to change things. Marissa watched the determination grow on his face. What do you mean? I mean, I've let these policies happen for too long. I signed documents, approved strategies, without really considering the human impact. He placed his mug on the coffee table. I can't change the past, but I can absolutely change the future. A pause followed, a moment of silence charged with possibilities. The rain continued outside, creating a steady rhythm against the windows. I'm not asking you to do anything, Marissa said finally. I only told you this because I trust you now. Those words, I trust you, touched Beckham deeply. Trust was a rare commodity in his business world, where every smile could hide a hidden agenda, every handshake could be calculated for advantage. Thank you for trusting me, he replied. It means more than you know. Another silence settled, more comfortable than the last. The rain began to ease, turning into a gentle drizzle. It's getting late, Marissa observed. Yes, Beckham agreed, but made no move to get up. For a few minutes, they sat like that, two adults on a modest sofa, in a small apartment, connected by a sleeping child and newly shared truths. There was no need for words. The silence said enough. When Beckham finally stood up to leave, something had changed between them. An invisible barrier had fallen, replaced by a deeper understanding, a strengthened mutual respect. Thank you for the tea, he said at the door, and for the conversation. It was good, she replied simply. For a moment, they stood there, too close to be just acquaintances, too distant for something more. There was a tension in the air, a possibility hanging between them like an unasked question. Good night, Marissa, he said finally, taking a step back. Good night, Beckham. He walked down the stairs slowly, thoughtfully. In the car, instead of starting the engine immediately, he sat, looking at the building. The light in Marissa's living room was still on. He imagined her up there, perhaps looking out the window, perhaps checking on Ellie one more time before bed. The revelation about Marissa's connection to his company disturbed him deeply. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a responsibility he could no longer ignore. He took out his phone and sent a brief email to his assistant. Cancel my meetings for tomorrow morning. I need to review the HR policies of all subsidiaries. Top priority. As he drove through the silent city, Beckham felt a growing determination. The city's nightlights reflected on the wet asphalt, creating patterns that seemed to point to new paths, new possibilities. Things were going to change, and they would start changing tomorrow. The snow fell softly outside Beckham's office window, turning the city into a white postcard. From the 42nd floor, he watched the tiny movements of people below, looking like colorful ants against the pristine white. 2 weeks had passed since his conversation with Marissa. 2 weeks of intense meetings, policy reviews, and heated discussions with the board of directors. His father, Richard Hayes, had questioned his motives, accusing him of unproductive sentimentality. But for the first time, Beckham stood firm against his father's cold philosophy. His secretary interrupted his thoughts over the intercom. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Morris is here. Thank you, Caroline. Please show her in. Beckham adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. He had planned this moment carefully, considering every detail. He wanted it to be perfect, not out of vanity, but because Marissa deserved nothing less. The door opened, and Marissa entered, looking slightly uncomfortable in her best outfit, simple black pants and a blue blouse that Beckham recognized from other occasions. She looked around, clearly impressed by the understated luxury of the office. Beckham, she greeted with a nervous smile. This place is imposing. It's just an office, he replied, walking over to her and guiding her to the seating area by the window. Thank you for coming. Your message sounded important, she said, sitting on the leather sofa. Did something happen? Yes and no. Beckham sat across from her, maintaining eye contact. Do you remember our conversation about your old job? Marissa's face hardened slightly. Of course. I've spent the last 2 weeks reviewing all the human resources policies of our subsidiaries. He paused. What happened to you was not an isolated case, Marissa. Dozens of people were fired for similar reasons. Family issues, illnesses, circumstances beyond their control. I'm not surprised, she said softly. But why are you telling me this? Instead of answering directly, Beckham picked up a folder from the coffee table and handed it to Marissa. What is this? She asked without opening it. An offer. He gestured to the folder. Please. Hesitantly, Marissa opened the folder and began to read. Her eyes widened as she understood the contents. Are you offering me my old job back? Not exactly, Beckham corrected. I'm offering you a better position. Administrative support manager, with a team of 5 people under your supervision. Marissa looked stunned. But I don't have the qualifications for... You have all the necessary qualifications, he interrupted gently. Experience, competence, and something no degree can teach. Empathy and understanding for complex human situations. She continued reading, turning the pages slowly. This salary is more than double what I used to make. It's the fair market rate for the position, he replied simply. Harrison noticed the clause about flexible hours and family leave. Marissa read in silence, her eyes filling with unshed tears. When she finally looked up, there was a mix of emotions on her face. Gratitude, suspicion, hope, fear. Why are you doing this, Beckham? Is it because of Ellie? Because you feel guilty somehow? He shook his head. It's not charity, Marissa. And it's not guilt. It's justice. What happened to you was wrong. I'm just correcting a mistake. And the other people you mentioned, the dozens of other cases. A small smile appeared on Beckham's lips. Each one is receiving a similar letter today. New policies, new opportunities. We are changing the way we do business. Marissa looked at the contract again, running her fingers over the words as if to check if they were real. Your job is back, but with fair pay and flexible hours, you'll be at your daughter's performances. The words hung between them, laden with promise. Marissa closed the folder slowly, saying nothing for a long moment. I need to think, she said finally. This isn't a simple decision. I completely understand, Beckham replied. Take all the time you need. The rest of the meeting proceeded in a lighter conversation. Marissa asked practical questions about the position, the department, the responsibilities. Beckham answered everything with patience and clarity. When she stood up to leave, she seemed lighter, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I'm going to pick up Ellie from school, she said. She'll be excited to see you. May I join you? Beckham offered. My schedule is clear for the rest of the day. Marissa's smile was answer enough. The snow had stopped by the time they left the Hayes Technologies headquarters. Beckham's driver was waiting for them, with the car warmed up. The drive to Ellie's school was quiet, with Marissa looking out the window, still processing everything that had happened. When they arrived, Ellie was waiting in the schoolyard with other children. Upon seeing the two of them together, her face lit up with a smile that seemed to brighten the entire area around her. "Mommy! Beckham!" she shouted, running toward them, her backpack bouncing on her back. "You came together!" The three-way hug that followed warmed Beckham more than any heater could. This little family he had found by chance was changing his life in ways he could never have predicted. Back in the car, Ellie chatted excitedly about her day at school, a science project about plants, a story she wrote, a new friend she had made. Her energy was contagious, filling the space with life and joy. It wasn't long before the rhythmic sway of the car and the busy day took their toll. Ellie fell asleep mid-sentence, her head lolling to the side, her mouth slightly open. Marissa smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. She always falls asleep in the car, ever since she was a baby. A comfortable silence settled in. The city lights were beginning to come on against the darkening sky. Beckham looked at Marissa, then at Ellie sleeping in the back seat. A powerful emotion washed over him, something he had never felt before, something that had no name in his businessman's vocabulary. "With you two, I feel whole," he said softly, the words escaping before he could stop them. "Something I've never felt with anyone else." Marissa turned to him, her eyes meeting his in the car's dim light. She said nothing, but her hand found his on the seat, her fingers intertwining in a silent promise. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace. But inside that car, a new kind of peace had been found. A peace made of second chances, restored dignity, and hearts finally finding their place. Spring arrived in an explosion of color. The city parks bloomed with tulips and daffodils, and the trees that had stood bare all winter now sported foliage in vibrant shades of green. Beckham watched this transformation from his office window. His thoughts were on a small apartment across town, where a 5-year-old girl and her mother had completely changed his life. In the last few weeks, since he had offered Marissa the new job, something had shifted between them. What had begun as a chance encounter had evolved into something deeper. Marissa had accepted the position at the company, but had insisted on going through the normal interview process, refusing any special treatment. Her integrity only increased the respect Beckham felt for her. On his desk, 2 boxes awaited, a small velvet one and a larger one containing a golden key with a blue ribbon. 2 promises, 2 possible futures. Today would be the day he finally took the next step. His phone vibrated with a text from Marissa. "Ellie won't stop talking about the trip to the park. She's already picked out her favorite yellow dress." Beckham smiled, feeling that familiar warmth in his chest. He replied quickly, "Can't wait to see you both." He put both boxes in his jacket pocket. Today he would know if his life was about to change forever. The Sunday sun shone brightly in the Central Park. Beckham arrived early, with enough time to set up a small picnic near the lake, a plaid blanket, a basket of snacks, and even an old guitar. When he saw the 2 of them walking down the path, his heart sped up. Ellie was wearing the yellow dress Marissa had mentioned, skipping more than walking. Marissa was radiant in a simple summer dress, her loose blonde hair blowing in the light breeze. "Beckham!" Ellie shouted when she saw him, running towards him with open arms. He caught her in midair, spinning her in a circle that made her laugh with joy. "How's my favorite girl?" "I brought my bubble kit," she announced, showing a small, colorful bottle. Marissa approached with a smile. "I hope we're not late." "You're right on time," Beckham replied, leaning in to kiss her cheek, a gesture that now felt natural, comfortable. The next few hours passed in pure joy. They ate sandwiches and fresh fruit, played frisbee, fed the ducks in the lake. Beckham even risked a few notes on the guitar while Ellie danced around them. They took pictures together, clumsy selfies with genuine smiles, Ellie making funny faces, the 3 of them with their heads together against the blue sky. Little digital memories of a perfect day. At one point, when Ellie was distracted with her soap bubbles a few feet away, Marissa turned to Beckham. "You seem different today," she observed. "More thoughtful." He smiled, surprised by her perception. "Is it that obvious?" "To me, yes." She gently held his hand. "What's going on?" Beckham took a deep breath. This wasn't how he had planned this moment, but perhaps simplicity was better. He looked directly into her eyes, those blue eyes Ellie had inherited, and found the courage he was looking for. "I care deeply for your daughter," he said, his voice low but firm. "She's special. I want to be her father, to secure her future. If you'll let me..." The words hung between them, as significant as any billion-dollar contract he had ever signed. Marissa didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Ellie, who was blowing soap bubbles with total concentration. When she looked back at Beckham, her eyes were shining with emotion. She squeezed his hand and replied simply, "You already are." "She knows it. And so do I." Something inside Beckham felt like it was expanding, filling spaces he didn't even know existed. Leaning in, he kissed Marissa softly, their first real kiss, not a casual peck on the cheek, a beginning. "I have something for you both," he said when they separated, "but it can wait until later." "What? What is it?" Ellie had returned, seemingly materializing the exact moment presents were mentioned. Beckham laughed. "It's a surprise. After your performance today. That's not fair, she protested, but her smile betrayed her mock outrage. The three of them spent the rest of the morning in the park, simply enjoying each other's company. To any observer, they would have looked like just another family enjoying a sunny Sunday. And in many ways, that's exactly what they had become. The school auditorium was packed for the spring performance. Unlike the first time he had been there, Beckham now knew many of the parents and staff by name. Principal Andrews greeted him warmly, with no trace of the reverential nervousness from months ago. He found Marissa already seated in the front row. She smiled as he approached, shifting slightly to make room for him. There was an ease between them now, a comfortable familiarity that had developed naturally over the months. The lights dimmed, and the show began. Unlike the solo dance from the first time, Ellie was now in a play with her class, a performance about spring. She played a butterfly with colorful wings made of crepe paper and a headband with antennae. When it was her turn to speak, her clear voice filled the auditorium. Spring is a time of change and new beginnings. Butterflies teach us that we can always transform into something new and beautiful. Beckham felt a lump in his throat. The message seemed especially meaningful today. Beside him, Marissa held his hand, squeezing it gently. No words, just presence and connection. When the play ended, the audience applauded enthusiastically. Ellie took an exaggerated bow, her paper wings rustling, and then looked for them in the audience. Upon spotting Beckham and Marissa, her smile widened even more. After the final thanks, the children were released to find their families. Ellie ran directly to them, still wearing her butterfly costume. "Did you see? Did you see?" "I didn't forget any of my lines," she exclaimed, jumping into Marissa's arms. "You were amazing, my love," Marissa replied, kissing her forehead. "The best butterfly I've ever seen," Beckham added. Ellie then jumped into his lap, her wings getting a little crumpled in the process. "And now, can I know the surprise?" Beckham exchanged a look with Marissa, who nodded slightly. "Actually, I have something very special to show you both," he said, setting Ellie down and kneeling to her level. He took the larger box out of his pocket and handed it to Ellie. "This is for both of you." Ellie took the box reverently and opened it slowly. Inside, the golden key with the blue ribbon gleamed under the auditorium lights. "A key?" she asked, confused. "I bought a house," Beckham explained softly. "If you'll accept, I want you to come live with me." Ellie's eyes widened comically. "Really?" "Very serious," he replied, smiling. "It's a big house, with a garden where you can plant flowers and have a swing set. It's near the park and has a room just for your drawings and art projects." Ellie looked at her mother, seeking confirmation. Marissa was visibly emotional, but she nodded. "I want to be part of this family," Beckham continued, looking from Ellie to Marissa. "I felt something for you that I've never felt for anyone." "The feeling is mutual," Marissa replied, her voice almost a whisper, her eyes welling up. "And that's not all," Beckham added, taking the smaller velvet box from his pocket. He turned to Marissa, opening it to reveal a ring with a single light blue stone that perfectly matched her eyes. "Marissa," he began, his voice trembling, "I never imagined I would find a family when I walked into this auditorium months ago. You and Ellie have shown me what really matters in life." He paused. "Would you do me the honor of marrying me?" The auditorium fell silent. Marissa looked at the ring, then at Ellie, and finally at Beckham. "Yes," she replied simply, tears now streaming freely down her face. "Yes, with all my heart." Applause erupted in the auditorium as Beckham placed the ring on Marissa's finger. Ellie jumped with excitement, her butterfly wings flapping frantically. "We're going to be a real family," she exclaimed, throwing herself into a group hug. It was in that moment, as the three of them hugged tightly, that Ellie whispered the word Beckham had secretly longed to hear. "Daddy." Beckham closed his eyes, feeling the emotion overflow. A single tear ran down his face, but it was a tear of pure, unreserved joy. Principal Andrews approached, discreetly wiping away a tear. "Congratulations," she said sincerely. "Vows you make a beautiful family." "Thank you," Beckham replied, not breaking the embrace. "We really do." Later, as they walked through the school parking lot, Ellie between them holding both their hands. Beckham thought about how his life had changed. Just a few months ago, he had measured success only in terms of numbers on a spreadsheet, professional achievements, business acquisitions. Now, he understood that true success was right here, in this small, trusting hand in his, in this quiet, deep love he felt for Marissa, in this family they had formed. "Can we see the house today?" Ellie asked, skipping with every step. "Please, please." "Of course," Beckham replied. "Actually, I thought we could go there right now." "Yes," Ellie shouted, raising her arms in celebration, her butterfly wings still attached to her back. Marissa smiled at him over Ellie's head, a smile full of promise and possibilities. The ring on her finger caught the sunlight, sending little dancing reflections around them. In the car, Ellie quickly fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the day's excitement. Marissa glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her face softened by motherly love. "She never calls anyone Dad," she said softly. "Not even as a joke." "I know how much that means," Beckham replied, equally moved. "I promise I'll never let her down. I'll never let either of you down." They drove towards the new house, not just a property, but a symbol of their future together. The family was finally formed, not by blood, but by choice. A choice made with love, respect, and the promise of a shared tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.